Hi, this is the video for Daf Yudchet of Masechet Megillah for Daf Shevui. I'm still a little sick this week, so if I cough at all, please forgive me, as you did last week, although I managed not to cough during the video last week. I wanted to talk again about something that we've talked about earlier in the Masechet, and that is the issue of language, the issue of understanding, because it comes up again in the second chapter, as it did on Daf Chet Amud Bet of the first chapter in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah, which we actually read back on page Yud Zayin, says, if he reads it B'chol Lashon, lo yatsa. He has not fulfilled his obligation. In other words, if he reads the Megillah, and here we're talking about Megillat Esther, in any language besides Hebrew, he has not fulfilled his obligation. Aval korinota azot. One can read the Megillah for people who do not understand Hebrew, belaz, in another language. In other words, there's something especially important about reading it in Hebrew. However, that doesn't supersede the importance of understanding it. And if somebody does not understand Hebrew, then they can fulfill their obligation by hearing the Megillah in another language. V'hal goez, in other words, somebody who speaks a foreign language, does not understand Hebrew, sheshama ashurit, who heard it in what they call Assyrian, but that means the Hebrew that we speak today, yatsa, even though he doesn't understand it, he has fulfilled his obligation. So we see that Hebrew, according to the simple reading of the Mishnah, Hebrew, or as they call it, Ashurit, Assyrian, works differently than any other language. Hebrew, one can fulfill one's obligation even if one doesn't understand what one is hearing. But when it comes to another language, what is most important is that somebody understands it. So if I were to hear the Megillah in Chinese, I would not fulfill my obligation because I do not understand Chinese. But if a Chinese person were to hear the Megillah in Hebrew and the Chinese person does not understand Hebrew, that Chinese person would still have fulfilled the obligation to hear the Megillah. Now, very interestingly, on Yud Chet, which is the daf that we're learning, Rav and Shmuel both elevate, or at least the Gemara understands them as elevating Greek to the same status as Hebrew. And I think that that's very, very interesting. What they say, or at least in the second half of the understanding of their statement, is that Rav Ushmuel da'amrei tarvayu, Rav and Shmuel, both of them say, Laz Yevani lechol kasher. Greek has the same status as Hebrew, and that anybody can fulfill their obligation by hearing Greek, because Greek is almost like Hebrew. It is God's language, if you will. And we could say two things about that. One is there was a midrash way back there on Daf Tet, I believe it was, one second, Daf Tet Amud Bet, where we saw what is the reason for Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was the one who allowed Torah scrolls only to be written in Greek. Amar Kra, the verse says, Yaft Elohim leYefet. God made something beautiful for Yefet, one of the children of Noach. Vayishkon be'oharei Shem. And Yefet should live in the tents of Shem. Who's Yefet? Yefet is the father of Greece. Yavan, the Hebrew word for Greece, is one of the children of Yefet. Who's Shem? Shem is one of our forefathers. That's where the word anti-Semite, we are Semitic people. Abraham was from the Semitic tribe. So Greek or Greece, right? Greek culture, Greek language should live in the tents of Shem. And I think there's a lot to be said about that for our own culture, that Jewish tradition is really a mixture of this external culture, both in terms of language and in terms of culture, this external culture of the Greek, which is the Western, the forefathers of the Western tradition, in the tents, in the synagogues of Shem. It's something we hear about in a lot of other aspects, and it comes up in the Gemara specifically for language.